She was forbidden fruit, and I took a bite I'll never forget. She pressed against me and said, "No one has to know," and I stopped thinking. Olivia Bennet had always believed in the power of boundaries, clear lines that defined right from wrong, loyalty from betrayal, stability from chaos. Growing up in a tight-knit family in Chicago, she had been taught that a life built on trust and integrity was the foundation for happiness. As an architect, she understood structure and design, the importance of strong foundations and clear edges. Her life was much the same, carefully constructed, measured, and contained. At 32, Olivia's world was orderly, predictable, and safe. She had Ethan Parker, her fiancé, her best friend, and a man who seemed to embody the future she wanted. They had met 5 years ago at a charity event and quickly fallen into a rhythm that promised security and companionship. Their relationship was free of drama or uncertainty, grounded in mutual respect and shared dreams of a life together. To the outside world, they were the ideal couple, yet, despite the stability, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't that Ethan wasn't kind or attentive, in fact, he was the very definition of reliability. He called her every morning, remembered her favorite coffee order, and was always ready with a reassuring smile after a hard day. But their relationship had settled into a pattern, one that offered comfort but little excitement. The passion they had once shared seemed to have been replaced by routine dinners and polite conversations. It was as if the spark that had drawn them together had quietly flickered out, leaving behind the ashes of familiarity. Olivia felt restless. On a crisp Monday morning, as she arrived at the sleek downtown office where she worked, she barely noticed the familiar hum of the city or the quiet bustle of her colleagues. Her mind was elsewhere, caught between the safety of the life she had and the quiet hunger for something more. That day, her firm welcomed a new client, Jackson Reynolds. Olivia had heard his name whispered in industry circles, a man known for his daring projects and uncompromising vision. She was assigned as his lead architect, a role that required intense collaboration and long hours. When she first met Jackson, she was struck by his presence. Jackson was not like anyone she had ever encountered. He carried himself with a rugged confidence, his salt and pepper hair and sharp blue eyes giving him a commanding air. His voice was deep and smooth, tinged with a subtle charm that was impossible to ignore. As he introduced himself, Olivia felt an unexpected flutter, a mixture of curiosity and something she dared not name. Over the following weeks, Olivia and Jackson worked closely. Their meetings stretched late into the evenings, often moving from conference rooms to quiet bars, their conversations growing more personal. Olivia found herself drawn to his intensity. The way he challenged her ideas and pushed her beyond her comfort zone. He seemed to see parts of her that she had hidden even from herself. One night, after a particularly long day, they found themselves alone in a quiet cafe. The rain pattered gently against the windows, and the soft glow of the streetlights cast a warm hue over the room. Jackson leaned in, his gaze locking with Olivia's. "You see the world differently than most," he said softly. "You design with precision, but I can tell there's an edge to you, a wildness you don't let out often." Olivia laughed nervously, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe I'm just careful." Jackson smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Careful is good. But sometimes, you have to cross the invisible line. Take a risk. Feel something real." His words stirred something deep within her, a whisper of rebellion against the life she had so carefully constructed. She looked away, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that crossing that line could mean disaster, for her, for Ethan, for everything she had built, but the temptation was there, undeniable and powerful. Over the following days, Olivia found herself caught in a dangerous dance. Her interactions with Jackson became charged with unspoken tension. A glance lingered a second too long, a casual touch sent shivers down her spine. The invisible line between professionalism and desire was becoming blurred. Meanwhile, her life with Ethan continued on its steady course. He planned their wedding with earnest enthusiasm, talked about the house they would buy, the future they would share. Olivia wanted to share that future with him. She loved him, truly. But the growing pull toward Jackson was something she could no longer ignore. One evening, as Ethan was out of town on a business trip, Olivia found herself alone with Jackson in the office. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows, casting a mosaic of color across the room. The air between them was thick with anticipation. Jackson stepped closer, his voice low. "You're standing at the edge, Olivia. What's holding you back?" She swallowed hard, feeling the invisible line between them stretch thinner. "I don't know if I'm ready to cross it." He reached out, gently brushing her cheek. "Sometimes, the greatest discoveries lie beyond the boundaries we set for ourselves." In that moment, Olivia realized that the line she had so carefully guarded was more fragile than she had ever imagined. The question was no longer whether she would cross it, but when. The days following Olivia's quiet encounter with Jackson were a tempest of emotions she could neither control nor fully understand. Each morning she awoke with a knot of tension in her stomach, a mingling of guilt and anticipation that colored every interaction she had with Ethan and Jackson alike. The life she had planned, the steady path with Ethan, seemed suddenly fragile, as if a single misstep could unravel everything. With Ethan, life was familiar. He was attentive and caring, still sending those morning texts that had once warmed her heart, still planning their future together with hopeful certainty. Their weekends were filled with quiet dinners, movie nights, and talks about the house they hoped to buy. Yet beneath his steadfast devotion, Olivia felt herself drifting farther away. The conversations that once sparked joy now felt obligatory. Ethan's touch, once comforting, now sometimes seemed to her like a distant echo, and then there was Jackson. Jackson was everything Ethan was not. Bold, unpredictable, and alive with a restless energy that both thrilled and terrified Olivia. Each time he called or texted, her heart raced with a wildness that frightened her. Their professional relationship, initially a collaboration between architect and client, was quickly transforming into something electric, charged with unspoken desire. One evening, after a particularly late meeting at the firm, Jackson offered to drive Olivia home. The streets were slick from an earlier rain, the city lights reflecting in puddles like scattered jewels. In the car, the air between them crackled with tension. "You're holding back, Olivia," Jackson said softly, eyes fixed on the road but aware of her gaze. Olivia swallowed hard, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "It's not that simple." He glanced at her, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. When was anything in life simple? Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, the truth in his words hitting close to home. Life had never been simple for her, not since she had learned to navigate the tightrope between expectation and desire. Yet, with Jackson, the possibility of falling felt less like danger and more like freedom. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed the subtle changes in Olivia's demeanor. She smiled less often, seemed distracted, and sometimes caught herself gazing out of windows with a faraway look. He attributed it to the stress of her job. The pressures she faced as a rising architect in a competitive world. Yet, a small, nagging worry took root in his heart. One afternoon, as they sat together in their favorite cafe, Ethan reached across the table and took Olivia's hand. "You've seemed distant lately," he said gently. "Is everything okay?" Olivia hesitated, the weight of secrets pressing on her. "I'm just tired, Ethan. Work has been intense." He nodded but wasn't convinced. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? We're partners." She gave a small, sad smile. "I know. And I appreciate that." But appreciation felt hollow when her heart was pulled in two directions. She loved Ethan, for his kindness, for the life they had built, but she couldn't deny the growing hunger she felt for something different, something new. That same week, Olivia and Jackson found themselves working late again. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of the computer and the occasional murmur of their voices. Jackson looked up from the blueprint he was reviewing and caught Olivia watching him. "Can't sleep?" he asked with a teasing grin. Olivia laughed nervously. "Something like that." He stood and walked over to her desk, leaning down to look at the designs. "You're talented, Olivia. You have this ability to bring structure to chaos. It's Captivating. His words sent a shiver down her spine. She wasn't sure if it was the compliment or the way he said it, but something in her responded, Jackson. She started, then stopped, unsure of how much to say. He turned to face her, his expression serious now. You don't have to be afraid to feel, Olivia. It's okay to want more. Her breath caught. For so long, she had suppressed her desires, told herself that security was enough. But with Jackson, the lines blurred. The invisible boundary she had erected began to crumble. One evening, as she left the office, Olivia's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jackson, dinner. Just you and me. Her heart pounded. Part of her wanted to say yes, to step over that boundary, if only to see what lay beyond. But another part of her was frozen with fear of what such a step would mean. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, okay. In that simple word was the beginning of a dangerous new chapter, a crossing of the line she had once vowed never to approach. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain as Olivia stepped out of her car, clutching her coat tightly around her. The small Italian restaurant was warm and inviting, its soft light spilling onto the wet pavement. She was nervous, her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. Dinner with Jackson was a step she hadn't taken lightly, but the pull between them was undeniable. Inside, Jackson was already seated, a glass of red wine in his hand, his eyes scanning the door until they landed on her. The moment their gazes met, Olivia felt a jolt, a surge of electricity that made her stomach flutter and her breath catch. Olivia, Jackson greeted her with a slow smile, standing to pull out her chair. Jackson, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. They settled into the quiet corner of the restaurant, the noise of other diners fading into a pleasant background hum. The conversation began with the usual niceties, work, projects, schedules, but soon, it shifted. Jackson's questions became more personal, probing yet gentle, as if he was peeling back layers to reveal the person beneath. Olivia found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone in years, the dreams she'd shelved, the passions she'd hidden, the restless energy that stirred inside her. Jackson listened, truly listened, his blue eyes never leaving hers. When he spoke, his voice was low and earnest. You're more than what you show the world, Olivia. There's a fire inside you, waiting to burn bright. She looked away, the compliment both thrilling and terrifying. For so long, she had hidden behind her carefully constructed facade. With Jackson, that facade was crumbling. As dinner progressed, the tension between them grew, subtle touches and fleeting glances sparking a silent conversation that needed no words. When the meal ended, Jackson suggested a walk, and Olivia found herself agreeing, unable to resist the allure of the night and the man beside her. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening under streetlights. They walked side by side, their steps in sync. Olivia's heart beat wildly as Jackson's hand brushed hers, and without thinking, she intertwined her fingers with his. His touch was warm, grounding, and yet it ignited a storm within her. She knew this was crossing a line, the invisible boundary she'd struggled to maintain. But as she looked up at Jackson, she realized that the line was not as clear as she had once believed. At the corner of the street, Jackson stopped, turning to face her. His eyes searched hers, filled with a vulnerability that caught her off guard. Olivia, he said softly, I know this is complicated. I know you have a life, a fiancé, and responsibilities. But I can't deny what I feel. She took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Jackson, I don't know what this means. I don't want to hurt Ethan. Jackson nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. I don't want to be the reason you lose yourself, either. But sometimes, the heart chooses before the mind can catch up. In that quiet moment, the city around them seemed to fade away. Olivia felt the invisible line dissolve beneath her feet, and with it, the world she thought she knew shifted forever. The days that followed Olivia's night walk with Jackson were marked by a restless unease she couldn't shake. The boundary she had tried so carefully to maintain between duty and desire was slipping, crumbling under the weight of the unspoken feelings that now pulsed between them. At work, Olivia found herself distracted. Meetings became harder to focus on, her mind often wandering to the brief moments she had shared with Jackson, the way his eyes held hers, the subtle brush of his hand against hers in the office. Every glance exchanged was a whisper of temptation, a silent invitation to cross further into unknown territory. One afternoon, as she was reviewing blueprints, her phone buzzed with a message from Jackson. "Lunch? There's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped a beat. She hesitated before replying, "Okay." The cafe was quiet, a small haven away from the buzz of the city. When Olivia arrived, Jackson was already waiting, his posture relaxed but eyes serious. They ordered coffee and settled into a secluded booth. Jackson's voice was low. "Olivia, I know this is complicated. I don't want to pressure you. But I can't keep pretending there's nothing between us." She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I'm scared, Jackson. I don't want to hurt Ethan. I don't want to ruin everything." Jackson reached across the table, his hand covering hers gently. "Sometimes, the heart whispers truths that the mind tries to silence. You don't have to make a decision now. But you need to listen to that whisper." His words echoed in her mind long after they parted. Olivia knew that the path she was on was dangerous, that the temptation was not just a fleeting feeling but a powerful force challenging everything she believed in. The question was no longer if she would cross the line, but when. The world Olivia had meticulously built was beginning to unravel. Thread by fragile thread. The illusions of certainty she had clung to, her engagement to Ethan, the promise of a stable future, the neat lines of her carefully ordered life, were all beginning to blur, revealing the cracks that had been hidden beneath the surface. Every day felt heavier, burdened with the weight of unspoken truths and forbidden desires. Olivia was caught in a relentless tug-of-war between the life she had chosen and the life that was beckoning her from the shadows. With Ethan, there was safety, predictability, and a quiet love born of years of shared experiences. With Jackson, there was fire, passion, and a dangerous allure that threatened to consume everything she had known. The tension between Olivia and Ethan had become palpable. Their conversations grew shorter, their silences longer. Once a refuge, their home now felt like a place she could barely breathe in. Ethan, for his part, sensed the growing distance but held on desperately, refusing to acknowledge the inevitable. He was determined to fight for the woman he loved, even as the signs of her slipping away became impossible to ignore. One evening, Olivia returned home late from the office, her heart pounding as she stepped inside. The apartment was quiet, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Ethan was sitting on the couch, his face drawn and tired, waiting for her. "Olivia," he said quietly as she entered. "We need to talk," she nodded, the words settling like a stone in her stomach. She had known this conversation was coming, but the reality of it was still devastating. Ethan's voice trembled as he continued. "I feel like you're not really here anymore. Like you're somewhere else, and I don't know how to reach you." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. She wanted to tell him everything, the meetings with Jackson, the stolen glances, the whisper of temptation that had grown into a roar. But the words were tangled in guilt and fear, and she couldn't bring herself to speak them aloud. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I don't want to hurt you, but you are," Ethan said softly, his voice breaking. Every day, meanwhile, the connection between Olivia and Jackson deepened. Their interactions were no longer confined to professional boundaries. They shared stolen moments, brief touches, and conversations that lingered long after the office had emptied. Jackson was magnetic, his presence a powerful reminder of the passion Olivia had buried beneath layers of responsibility. One rainy afternoon, Olivia found herself at Jackson's apartment. The rain pattered against the windows as they sat close on the couch, the warmth of the fire contrasting with the cold world outside. Jackson looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Why do you hold back?" he asked, his voice low. Olivia shook her head. "Because I'm afraid. Of what it means. Of what I'll lose." Jackson reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes, what we fear to lose is already gone. Sometimes, holding on only hurts more." His words resonated deeply, stirring a storm of emotions she could no longer contain. The invisible line she had fought so hard to maintain was fading, replaced by a yearning she could no longer deny. The next morning, Olivia woke up alone in Jackson's bed, the soft light filtering through the curtains. The events of the night before replayed in her mind, the stolen kisses, the whispered promises, the overwhelming sense of connection. But beneath the passion lay a deep, gnawing guilt. She had crossed the line, and there was no going back. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Can we talk? Please." Her heart clenched. She knew the conversation was unavoidable. The illusions she had lived under were shattering, and the truth was demanding to be faced. That evening, Olivia met Ethan at their favorite park, a place filled with memories of happier times. The autumn leaves rustled around them as they walked slowly, the weight of silence pressing heavily. Ethan stopped and looked at her, his eyes searching. "Why, Olivia? Why did you let this happen?" She took a deep breath, the tears threatening to spill. "I don't know. I thought I was happy, but I wasn't. I felt trapped. And then Jackson came along, and I realized there was more to life than what I had." Ethan's face crumpled with pain. "And what about us? Were we just a convenience? A safe choice?" "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "You were more than that. You still are. But I lost myself somewhere along the way." The tears fell freely now, and Ethan pulled her into a hug, both of them trembling with the weight of their shattered dreams. In the weeks that followed, Olivia was forced to confront the reality of her choices. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with difficult decisions and painful consequences. She had broken the trust of the man she once loved, and in doing so, had crossed a boundary that could never be undone. Yet amidst the heartbreak, there was a flicker of hope. The journey had stripped away the illusions she had held onto for so long, revealing a deeper truth about herself and what she truly desired. The fragile equilibrium Olivia once believed in had crumbled, replaced by a labyrinth of secrets and half-truths that grew heavier with every passing day. She was living a double life, caught between the familiar comfort of Ethan and the intoxicating thrill of Nathan. But with every stolen moment, every whispered conversation hidden behind closed doors, the web of deceit tightened. Threatening to collapse around her, her mornings began with a practiced smile and a brief kiss from Ethan before she left for work, carrying with her the weight of guilt that no amount of rehearsed words could erase. She was an expert at compartmentalizing, the devoted fiancé during the day, the passionate lover to Nathan at night. But beneath the surface, the cracks widened, and the lies began to eat away at her sense of self. At the office, the tension between Olivia and Nathan was palpable. Their interactions had evolved from professional to deeply personal, laden with unspoken promises and shared secrets. They would exchange brief glances during meetings, their eyes lingering just a moment too long. Every touch, a hand on a shoulder, a brush of fingers, was charged with electricity, a silent declaration of the forbidden. One afternoon, as they reviewed project plans, Nathan's voice lowered. "Olivia, we can't keep living like this. The secrecy, it's eating us both alive." She nodded, her fingers trembling slightly. "I know. But what choice do we have? Ethan, he's everything I promised to be with." Nathan's eyes softened. "And what about what you want?" She looked away, struggling to admit the truth even to herself. "I don't know anymore." Ethan, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly perceptive. The late nights at work, the distracted conversations, the distant look in Olivia's eyes, he saw the signs but was desperate to hold on to hope. One evening, he surprised her with dinner at their favorite restaurant. As they sat across from each other, the flickering candlelight failed to bridge the gap growing between them. "Olivia," Ethan began cautiously, "I can feel something's wrong. I want to understand. Please, talk to me." She forced a smile, the guilt nearly unbearable. "I'm just stressed, Ethan. Work is demanding." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "You don't have to carry it alone." Her heart ached at his sincerity, but the truth was a heavy burden. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've been distant, and it's not fair to you." The complexity of her double life came to a head one rainy evening. Olivia was at Nathan's apartment when Ethan unexpectedly arrived, having decided to surprise her. The knock on the door sent a shock through her, panic and dread flooding her senses. She hesitated, torn between the two worlds she inhabited. Nathan's expression darkened as she opened the door. "Ethan," she said, voice strained. "I wasn't expecting you." Ethan looked from her to Nathan, confusion and hurt flashing across his face. "What's going on, Olivia?" The room felt suffocating. Olivia's carefully maintained facade crumbled as the truth she had kept hidden spilled into the open. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I've made mistakes." The confrontation that followed was painful and raw. Words were exchanged, accusations. "Apologies, please." Ethan's heartbreak was palpable, and Nathan's frustration boiled beneath his calm exterior. Olivia felt torn apart by the conflict she had ignited. The life she had with Ethan was slipping through her fingers, and the future with Nathan was uncertain and fraught with risk. In the days after the confrontation, Olivia retreated into herself, struggling to navigate the consequences of her actions. The lies had shattered her relationships, leaving her isolated and vulnerable, yet amidst the wreckage, she found a flicker of clarity. The journey ahead would be difficult, but it was hers to own. The secrets and lies had revealed truths about who she was and what she wanted. The breaking point came quietly, yet with a force that left no room for denial. Olivia had carried the weight of her secrets and lies for months, each day fracturing the fragile balance between the life she once knew and the one she was desperately trying to create. The tension that had simmered beneath the surface erupted in a storm of raw emotions, tearing through everything she had worked so hard to hold together. It began with a phone call, a simple, unexpected call from Ethan that shattered her carefully constructed world. His voice, once warm and comforting, was now heavy with pain and exhaustion. "Olivia," he said quietly, "we need to talk. In person." Her heart pounded in her chest as she agreed. Knowing this was the moment she had been dreading. The moment when the illusions would finally crumble and the truth would no longer be a whisper but a roar. They met in the small park where they had first confessed their love, the place that once held so much promise now tinged with bittersweet memories. The autumn leaves fell around them, a golden carpet masking the turmoil beneath. Ethan looked at her with eyes that held both love and sorrow. "I can't do this anymore, Olivia. I've tried to hold on to us, to believe that we could come back from this, but I'm breaking." Tears filled her eyes as she reached for his hand, the touch both familiar and distant. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen." His voice cracked. "But it did happen. And it's tearing me apart." The honesty in his words cut deeper than any accusation. Olivia realized that the man who had stood by her, loved her, and trusted her was now unraveling because of her choices. Meanwhile, Nathan's impatience grew. He wanted more than stolen moments and whispered promises. He wanted a future with Olivia, a future that could only exist if she severed the last ties with Ethan. One evening, as they sat in Nathan's apartment, the tension between them was palpable. "You can't keep living in the past, Olivia," Nathan said firmly. "You have to choose, him or me. You can't have both." Her eyes filled with tears. "It's not that simple. I'm torn between two worlds, two loves." Nathan's voice softened. "I love you. But love isn't enough if it comes with this pain." The weight of his words settled heavily on her, pushing her closer to the edge. The breaking point was reached when Ethan confronted Olivia with a truth he could no longer hide. He was moving out. The house they had dreamed of buying, the future they had planned, it was all slipping away. "I need to find myself again," Ethan said quietly. "And I can't do that with all this between us." Olivia nodded, her heart breaking as she watched the man she loved walk away. She was left with the ruins of a life. The shattered illusions of love and loyalty. In the aftermath, Olivia was forced to confront the consequences of her choices. The freedom she had sought came with a price, loss, guilt, and the daunting task of rebuilding from the wreckage. But amidst the pain, there was a glimmer of hope. The breaking point was not an end, but a beginning, the chance to find truth, redemption, and perhaps, a new kind of love. The quiet that followed Ethan's departure was suffocating. Olivia found herself alone in the apartment they had once shared, surrounded by memories of a life she had dismantled piece by piece. The walls echoed with silence, each room a testament to the love she had broken and the trust she had shattered. She wandered from room to room, touching objects that now felt foreign, the coffee mugs, the framed photos, the worn sofa where they had spent lazy Sunday afternoons. Every item was a reminder of a past she could no longer reclaim. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Nathan, texts filled with longing, promises, and pleas. But Olivia felt distant, as if she were watching her life from behind a glass wall, disconnected from the passion and pain that had consumed her. One evening, she sat by the window, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. She thought about the choices she had made, the lies she had told, the boundaries she had crossed, and the inevitable reckoning that was coming. She knew she couldn't run forever from the truth. Nathan came over, his presence filling the empty space. He sat beside her, silent at first, then spoke gently. "You don't have to do this alone, Olivia. Whatever comes, I'm here." She looked at him, tears brimming. "I'm scared, Nathan. Scared of what I've lost, scared of what's to come." He took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "We'll face it together." As days passed, Olivia began to confront the realities of her situation. She reached out to Ethan, hoping for closure, for a way to heal the wounds between them. Their conversations were painful, filled with honesty and sorrow, but also a tentative understanding. Ethan confessed his hurt but also his hope for forgiveness and friendship. Olivia realized that healing was possible, though the scars would remain. In time, Olivia and Nathan rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of truth rather than secrecy. The passion that had once been reckless grew into a deeper connection, one tempered by honesty and the lessons of the past. Though the road ahead was uncertain, Olivia felt a newfound strength. She had crossed the boundary, shattered illusions, and faced the consequences. Now, she was ready to live authentically, embracing both the light and the shadows of her journey. The moment of decision weighed heavily on Olivia's heart. After months of turmoil, lies, and shattered dreams, she found herself standing at a crossroads, between the past she once cherished and the uncertain future that beckoned. The choice before her was no longer about right or wrong, but about what kind of life she wanted to lead, and who she wanted to be. Ethan had moved out, the silence of their empty apartment a constant reminder of the cost of her actions. Their conversations, though filled with attempts at understanding, revealed the irreparable damage done. He was healing, slowly reclaiming himself from the heartbreak, while Olivia grappled with the pain of loss and the hope for redemption. Nathan, on the other hand, was a source of passion and possibility. With him, Olivia had felt alive in ways she never had before, her desires awakened, her spirit rekindled. Yet the shadows of guilt and fear lingered, reminding her that freedom came with a price. One evening, as she sat alone in the quiet of her new apartment, Olivia's phone lit up with a message from Nathan. "We need to talk. Tonight." Her heart fluttered with anticipation and apprehension. When Nathan arrived, they sat together in the dim light, the air thick with unspoken words. "I want us to move forward, Olivia," Nathan said earnestly. "But I need to know you're ready. That you're choosing this because it's what you truly want." Olivia nodded, her eyes searching his. "I want this, Nathan. I want to build something real. But it's not easy. I'm scared, of the past, of the future." He took her hands in his. "Fear is part of it. But love, real love, is worth it." The next day, Olivia met Ethan to deliver her decision. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the weight of their history pressing between them. "Ethan," she began, voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "I've made my choice. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. You deserved better." Ethan smiled sadly, reaching out to touch her hand. "I want you to be happy, Olivia. Even if it's not with me." They parted with a bittersweet embrace, a chapter closing with grace despite the heartbreak. In the weeks that followed, Olivia embraced her new life with Nathan, stepping beyond the boundaries she had once feared. The path was not without challenges. Trust had to be rebuilt, wounds healed, and fears faced, but for the first time in a long while, Olivia felt a sense of authenticity and hope. She had crossed the boundary and, in doing so, discovered herself anew. The dawn broke gently over the city skyline, casting a warm glow through the curtains of Olivia's new apartment. She stood by the window, watching the world wake, the soft hum of life stirring below. The silence around her was no longer heavy with regret or uncertainty, it was filled with the quiet promise of a new beginning. The journey that had led her here had been long and fraught with pain. She had crossed boundaries, not just the invisible lines between loyalty and temptation, but the internal limits she had set for herself. She had faced the consequences of her choices, endured heartbreak, and wrestled with the complexity of human desire. Yet through it all, she had found a deeper truth about who she was and what she wanted. Nathan's hand found hers from behind, warm and reassuring. She turned, meeting his eyes that had become her anchor amid the storm. "We've come a long way," he said softly. "We have," Olivia agreed, squeezing his hand. "And there's still a long road ahead." He smiled. "A mixture of hope and determination. Whatever comes, we face it together." The past was not forgotten, nor was it erased. Ethan's presence lingered in her heart as a reminder of love's fragility and the importance of honesty. But Olivia no longer felt shackled by guilt. She had made peace with her past and embraced the uncertainty of the future. Together, Olivia and Nathan built a life that honored both passion and commitment, a delicate balance of desire and trust. Their love was not perfect, but it was real, messy, complicated, and beautifully human. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the city below, Olivia felt a sense of freedom she had never known. She had crossed the boundary. And in doing so, had discovered the courage to live authentically and love fully.